This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Just begging to course its way through your veins.
Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we?
You're into comic books, aren't you?
I'm a nerd.
But you do like comic books.
Comic books aren't just for sad nerds anymore.
Do you think we need one more?
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Do you think we need one more?
Objection, calls for speculation, move to strike.
This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
All right, we'll get one more.
Spectators, a comic book podcast with Jake and Jesus.
What's going on, spectators, and welcome back to this, the 101st episode of Spectales. I'm your Never Condones Violence host, Jake, alongside a man whose beard is the only living being on Earth to ever record a successful roundhouse kick to the face of Chuck Norris. Of course, I'm talking about my friend, Jesus. What's going on, Jesus?
Fun fact, I just mentioned this to Jake. This is why he's doing the opening, guys, but I've been told that Chuck Norris wears the beard underwear. So I don't know what to do with that, but it's true. It's true. You don't have to go check.
Sold beard branded underwear.
Well, of course, Jake. You're not the type of person that it's marketed to. Is people like Chuck Norris, Superman, things of that nature. So
yeah, really tough guys. That makes a lot of sense. But the kick anecdote is not necessarily just by chance either, right? Because we've got a little bit of a interesting flavor, an interesting kick, if you will, to this particular episode. We, Jesus, are having a Kickin Roundtable. And for all the listeners out there who have no idea what I'm talking about, you'll figure it out. We should start first by, I guess, thanking everybody for listening into our 100th episode last week. Man, we got millions upon millions of downloads, and Apple, emailed us to say that we broke all sorts of records for podcast downloads, and everybody said, oh, it was the greatest episode. How are you going to top that? Well, we're coming back with an even better episode with a lot of our friends. Jesus, should we introduce those friends now?
Yes, I think we should, and we're going to be very specific with everyone here. Just another thing, thank you for the 100th episodes, the most downloaded 100th episode from Spectales ever. I don't think it's ever been done. So, but yes, friends of the show, they've been on the show, so you guys might know their voices already. But we'll go ahead and get started, and I guess we'll get started with the guy next to me, at least on my screen, James. Go ahead and introduce yourself, James, and then we'll go from there.
Hey, I'm James Ferguson. So previous guest of Spectales, I guested with our another guest that will be revealed in a moment, and also to chat about a real slobber knocker, which I kickstarted last year with Dan Buxa. So first issue of 3, and we're here to talk about a new anthology that we're getting up and running on National Pizza Day, which is fitting because it's called Slices of Life, a horrifying world where pizza has been prohibited.
Nice. All right. Thank you, James. And we'll definitely get into that, man, because I love that premise. And then next to you is Mario Candelaria, who's been on with us a few times.
Hey, everyone. Mario Candelaria, third time, long time for this show. I think James stole my idea for Pizza Prohibition. That's kind of awkward. You both us at the same time. I'm a writer also on Slices of Life. It's a collection of 4 longer form short stories with an interconnected narrative set in a world where a deranged politician outlawed pizza because people are making fun of the way he ate it online.
Nice.
Wow, just an impossible premise, of course.
I can't imagine that ever happening.
And that voice, everybody, is from our good friend Christof, who was also on. Everybody here was on roughly between like October and December of 2022. I believe Christof was the most recent. Mario, you did an episode with us, I believe in 2023.
Yep.
But you were just a special guest host because we just missed you, so we wanted you to come back on. However, Christof, you were on promoting Under Kingdom. That was a little over a year ago, which turned out amazing. Congrats on Under Kingdom. But go ahead and introduce yourself and what you're talking about today as well.
Yeah. So my name's Christof. I'm a comics writer from Sydney, Australia, hence the accent. Yeah, so I'm here talking today. I've got an upcoming Kickstarter of issues 1 and 2 of Requiem, which is a sci-fi horror series from myself, and also written by David Hazan, who does Nottingham over at Mad Cave, and artist Phil Apley. So it's sci-fi horror about a crew of a spaceship who basically all they know is that they have to wipe their memories consistently, and if they don't, all they know is something really, really bad will happen. So they find a ship that's identical to theirs with the crew all murdered, but one person, and shit starts to go down, basically.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Well, okay. Thank you for that description. And for all the listeners, let's backtrack a little bit. I said we were doing a Kickin Roundtable for Kickstarter. And why are we doing this? Well, regularly, we have a lot of friends that we've talked to on the show previously, but something about our format really doesn't. We have the Grail Tale, right? And we love the Grail Tale. We love hearing every creator's story about what that comic or collectible is that they love so much. But it doesn't really give us the greatest opportunity to bring back some of the coolest and most interesting people that we talked to the first time around. So in this particular case, we had been reached out to by Mario, James, and Christof, all separately, of course. Well, Mario and James, I guess you guys were together, but maybe you were talking about something different. But they reached out to separately, but wanting to come on to talk about these projects. And it's funny because we were really interested in these projects, even though they're drastically different. And we said, how do we get them all together? And because so much of the comic industry, Jesus and I talk regularly about the status of it and where it's going and where it's at. And so many people are crowdfunding projects. And what better way to dive into that topic, that subject, than to get some people who are actively crowdsourcing or crowdfunding what they're doing right now and have had successful crowdfunding projects previously. Each one of the individuals on this show right now, outside of Jesus and myself, have had successful Kickstarter. Jesus might have. I don't know. Did you kickstart the beard at one point?
Yeah, I did, but it unfortunately broke too many records, so they just booted me off. I'm actually banned off Kickstarter, guys. We have to go through the Spectales account.
So we're going to do a Kickin Roundtable where in addition to talking about each of these really, really cool and very different projects, we are also going to talk about the industry, how you go about kickstarting a project, and sort of the highs and lows and the pitfalls and the jubilation for success and all of that comes with it. So we're going to dive into that. But Jesus brought something up. I'm going to give you all the credit for this because when we were talking earlier on the phone, we were trying to figure out, this really isn't a recent pickup. This isn't a Grail Tale. This isn't what could is there anything that this is? And we figured out that what a successful Kickstarter is to all of you guys, what it is a whale tail. It's a big white whale. You guys are chasing after the white whale. And we actually happen to have a segment just for that. So this entire episode is just one big, long whale tail segment. So without further ado.
Well, shiver me timbers and walk the plank. There be another whale tail on the horizon.
We don't get to press that button enough. We should do this more often. So let's kick this thing off. So we've already kind of got the rough pitches from each of you as far as what the projects are over. And Christof, if you don't mind, and by the way, Christof, jump in with your own questions whenever you want. You guys are not just guests, but you're also co-hosts. So absolutely all together. But I'm going to start with Mario and James. So funny enough, you guys almost 2 years ago, I it was when you guys were promoting Killcella. You guys told us about this upcoming anthology, right? I remember it was, I can't remember if it was both of you or maybe it was James or maybe it was, I can't remember, but Jesus and I can at least remember that 2 years ago, you told us you were going to promote it and we said, please let us know when you do, because this is ridiculously awesome. And and I think you guys came up with this during the pandemic, right? During 2020. Wasn't that when the original idea somewhere in that ballpark?
Yeah,
a little earlier.
A little earlier than that.
A little
2019.
earlier. Okay.
Well, let's see. 2020 pandemic. Yeah, I mean, look, the joke is that you could tell who was in office when we thought of the idea because of the president banning pizza. So like that kind of dates us a little bit in terms of when we thought about this.
I just wanted to jump in a little bit though, just in terms of like your premise of politicians eating something weird.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that is so universal. Like because obviously in the States you've had DeSantis eating the pudding cup weird. And here it's happened a few times. We had like one of our politicians try and eat a hot dog, but instead of eating it like, you know, how you would normally eat a hot dog at the end, he bit into like the middle.
Oh gosh, it's a monster.
Like a turkey leg.
So like the idea of like, I feel like the idea of like politicians eating things weird is so. As soon as you said it, I'm like, oh, that feels like such a surprisingly universal idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I was probably high when I thought of that, to be honest. I think James credits me for coming up with that in the group chat, just throwing that out there, and then we just ran with it. We just yes-anded a whole collection of stories, apparently.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is like the only premise, the only like rules for us thinking about this was it's just set in this world. Like everyone went in different directions. All the stories are different. There's all different genres and stuff that are pulled in. And you know, certainly different writers, different artists, but it's that thoroughfare of like, what would you do for pizza? Like, what lengths would you go through if like this favorite food of like everyone's is suddenly banned?
Yeah. So, you know, just real quick, last week I talked about Chew, the comic book, and they outlawed poultry, and because of the bird flu, and that dates that book, right? Mm-hmm. And it was so interesting because it's such a butterfly effect, right? It made the FDA the superpower, you know, organization in the U.S. because they were out, like they were, you know, like cracking down on black market chicken places and stuff like that, right? That had chicken. So when, you know, when you say that there's no pizza, pizza is literally like top 2 favorite foods for a ton of people, right, including myself. So whenever you guys, or you, Mario, came up with that idea and you guys started in the group chat, I guess who you were group chatting with, how did it evolve from just that into, well, let's do an anthology and then let's kickstart it? And like, I guess kind of give us a timeline of how that got fleshed out.
I could jump in. It's a lot of stops and starts because you know, as these kind of things do, it starts as a pipe dream. And we're like, oh yeah, it'd be cool. Wouldn't it be nice if we did it? Wouldn't it be cool if we did this? But it's the difference is actually doing it. And I think Mario, I think you were probably the first one who actually got like a story together. You had art like for seemingly forever ago.
Yeah, back in my ambitious days. I reached out to Laura Helsby and I was like, yo, we have this idea for a story. I pumped out that script that night. No toppings for old men. And yeah, we just, just ran with it. I think it's like an 8-pager or a 10-pager, I think. But yeah, we got the ball rolling. We started reaching out to other people. I know I helped Matt find his artist, but the starts and stops James alluded to was in just, we all have other things. James has a very busy personal life outside of comics and, as well as the other crew. So just finding the time to, get into it. And I think trying to find the right artist for Phil Butehorn's story really took its time, just trying to, get this going. But yeah, now we're here. We have everything we need and we're ready to go.
Yeah.
So how long was that? I'm sorry. Like how long was the time frame? Like
it was years.
Between
it was years. Again, like the idea started back, 6 years ago at least, and then it was, my story's been done for at least a year, I think, because it was like, oh yeah, we did this, and then it's like, now what? And then, to Mario's point, Phil took a little while to find an artist and settle down with that, and then it was like, all right, well, we got to get some pages together. We have to have something to be able to create a Kickstarter, and then we're all bouncing around and it's like we just have to kind of sit down and do it. So now and when you look at one of those like everyday holiday kind of calendars and you see that National Pizza is coming up, like we really started to get moving on this probably in like November of like, let's take this seriously, let's actually do it, because like what better way to launch than National Pizza Day?
I think once the world opened back up in 2022, people started going back to work and everything. That's really when it slowed down. And we all had other things. I had Killchella coming out and a few other items that took my focus. But yeah, like James said, once, late, I think in the summertime, we finally got someone for Phil, right?
Yeah.
And then, once we started getting that going, then we found a color artist in Pete Collins, and then we just started going from there. Now we have cover art. Then I got to work doing the graphics on Photoshop for other things. Okay, now we have the graphics. We have, all the elements that we need. So we're like, why? We had all the ingredients to make the pizza, so why not, get the dough? I mean.
And on that note, I'm curious. I wanted to ask with regards to the anthology. Mm-hmm. So was it always going to be an anthology, or was there a time where it was a singular story that you guys were like, no, there are too many different stories that could be happening inside of this world? And then follow-up question to that. How did you guys go about deciding who you would bring into this anthology? Was it a pitch scenario where you were asking them to pitch you, or were you pitching these other creators or writers to be involved?
That's a great question. James, you want to get the first part? I'll get the second part.
Yeah. From the premise, everyone went in different directions with it. So that was really how it just lended itself to an anthology, because it was no one kind of, not that we disagreed in terms of what the story should be, but because we all had different ideas for it and they all sounded fun. So we just decided to explore it that way.
Oh, also, because we all have drastically different stories, we had this idea for a one story that connects everything to show that it's all in the same world, and that's the story of the driver, who she starts off the book. She has little chapters throughout in between the stories, and that tie one into the next one, kind of like the Crypt Keeper introducing the next story, and then she wraps up the whole book with the resolution of her story.
I will be very interested to see how that plays out with the different styles of art between each story, and how you guys work that out. That's so we were able to read some of each, we saw some pages from each of the stories. James, we did get to see your story, I believe, in its entirety, which was roughly 10 to 12 pages.
Yeah, I think it's 12. There.
Yeah. And which loved it, by the way. No spoilers, but the writing on this on every page is just tip top. James, when you were on, I think we had read multiple of your shorts that you had been a part of other anthologies. And I don't know if it is a specific skill to that shortened time period that you have, or I'm assuming your writing transcends just the short length, but you really do have the cadence down just perfectly. I love everything all the way to the ending that really kind of, it hit you right there. And so the great stuff. Okay, so we've got an anthology here, and I don't want to switch gears too roughly, but I want to make sure that we're also giving a little bit of look at what Christof has. Now, Christof, completely different style of Kickstarter, with Requiem being one. You successfully kickstarted the first book in the series, Requiem 1, and you did that last summer, correct?
Yeah. So in June, July last year, yeah.
And then it was delivered in November of last year?
Yeah, I mean, that was the aim, as I'm sure Mario and James know, that, there are delays and things happen. So we got most of the stuff done by November, but it took a little bit longer than we were hoping to. So I think we're just wrapping it all up now. There's a handful of people who we had to chase up for a shipping detail. So that's kind of where we're at. So we're pretty much done with it. But yeah, it just took a little bit longer than expected.
Christof, would you ever overestimate time just to be like, hey, we're ahead of schedule?
So that's going to be the strat for this second Kickstarter, just be way more generous.
Okay.
Yeah, with the amount of time we need.
Oh, hey Zeus, we're gonna have to come up with some questions for the fulfillments and stuff. Oh wait, we already wrote those down. Lots of questions about fulfillment and that the process on that end. But let's give Christof just a little bit more on this end. So this new Kickstarter that you have, this is kickstarting you said 1 and 2, but 1 was already successful. So is this mostly for 2, but everybody who supports it is going to get 1 in addition? Is that how that's going to work?
Great question. So the reason that we've called it Requiem 1 to 2 instead of just like Requiem 2 is we kind of want it to feel like a jumping on point for new readers as well as a continuation for existing. So all the rewards are based around you can either just get 2 for people who are just who are continuing with us, and then we've got catch up packs and stuff for people who are new to the series. Yeah, so that was something that, and I'm sure you guys do this as well, where a lot of, at least for me, Kickstarter prep is like looking at other people's Kickstarters and trying to like figure out what the trends behind successful Kickstarters are and what the things they have in common. So that was one of the things we kind of picked up for a lot of really big successful Kickstarters that were kickstarting, the second or third or whatever issue in a continuing series, is that they would usually have like, if it was for issue 3, they have 1, 2, 3, or they would include 1 in the title. So that was kind of the logic behind that.
So that you're not alienating people, right?
Yeah, 100%. You're sort of trying to appeal to, obviously with Kickstarter, you want to get as many people as you can. So you're just trying to appeal to, as many people as you can and not isolate anyone.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned that because we had Ryan Little on, who does Kickstarters as well. He's a writer for Marvel and Disney Plus on What If. And which I thought was interesting, he does catch-ups as well, but for all of his back catalog of Kickstarters. So he'll have like one tier, and we can talk about tiers in a little bit, but one tier will be $5 and he catch up on this one, or $5 to catch up on that one. And it's just the digital versions of it, but it's also he can always be making it available as he's doing Kickstarters, which is really interesting. But I mean, I agree that when you look at, especially like, let's say you're as a reader, when I go into an LCS, if something catches my eye and it's issue 3, like the cover, for example, I go back and I look if they have issue 2 and issue 1, and I'll get them. And if they don't have issue 2 and issue 1, I probably won't get it, or I'll hesitate to get it because I'm like, how hard is this going to be to find? People say put it on your pull list, this and that, but it's just I just don't have the time to do the research, so that's why I go to the LCS. And so that's very, very, I guess, needed when kickstarting, is doing what you're doing where you have the ability to catch up. Because I can tell you right now, I missed Requiem, and I, you're a friend of the show, and I follow you on Instagram and Twitter, and I missed it. I should have had it. I didn't. And
and it's so easy to miss, right? And I'm sure we'll touch on this a bit later, but the comic, there are so many comics coming out right now, and so many good comics, and it's really easy to miss stuff.
Yeah. And so that's why by you having that opportunity or putting that opportunity there to catch up, I mean, it just, for someone like me that maybe missed it, because I'm sure there's tons of people like me that missed it, they can go back and read it. Because again, now I got a chance to read number 1. And I'm telling you, like where the story and the cliffhanger.
Oh,
I want to read
that
more.
So,
Thank you. That's so kind. That is a lot of that is because, as you know, people have said that Requiem's quite kind of a left turn for me tonally. So a lot of that is helped by David, who anyone who's David and me are really, really close friends, but our work is pretty much polar opposites. So my work tends to be silly and uplifting and fun, and Dave's is just grim, just always really grim and down. So he really helped kind of me and craft those cliffhangers and make sure they really hit. So I'm so glad that the cliffhanger for 1 hit, because we're really, really proud of that one.
Christof, I was going to ask, what's it like working with another writer? Because I work with James sometimes, and it's a nightmare. And I'm just kidding. I want to know what your process is for working with another writer.
Totally, yeah.
Feeling is mutual, I assure you.
Yeah, actually, that's true.
It's a great question, and I think, at least for me, it's very like. So I work with David, and then I also work with. I'm working with another writer on a co-written thing at the moment. And a lot of it has to do with like what their process is versus mine. So my process is very rewrite heavy. So my kind of, I guess, skill is that I can get something down that's really rough pretty quickly. Whereas Dave tends to take a long time to get anything down, but by the time it gets down, it's fully formed. So the idea is we basically are just trying to hack my process and his by I basically get a kind of roughish draft to him, and then he builds off that, and then we'll shoot it back to me, and then I'll shoot it back to him for a final pass.
Like, I didn't know if you're working on a skeleton together or what's happening.
Oh yeah, so we have before we even started scripting, we had it fully outlined.
Okay.
But again, even with the outline, we use that process of all right, here's kind of we discussed kind of where we thought the story was going to go, and then I would send him something really rough, and then he would come back, and then I would take another pass. So yeah, a lot of back and forth, but I tend to be the first boots on the ground, and then he's more the polish.
Okay.
Christof, your story, you'd mentioned that you're co-writing this with David Hazan, and the way that I saw it is, for you, this is so much more blood than I'm used to. But for David, I think it's a scale back, actually. In terms of the amount of blood. So it's really kind of that happy medium there. But the horror, the thriller, the mystery going on, I really did feel traces of like Alien in your story. The sci-fi elements were very prevalent, so very intriguing, and that's the best part is when I preparing for this conversation, I got to enjoy two completely separate like worlds or universes of stories, and that's one of the best parts about comics. I generally tell people that I gravitate towards horror comics, but I still read superheroes, and I still read, one thing I don't read a lot of in comics is comedy. I mean, I know it's there, but the thing is like the big comics on the shelves generally aren't like comedic. I mean, there's certain funny pieces to it, but when you have something like Mario and James, what you guys are doing and the different elements, now I don't know what all of the other stories, James, you incorporate comedy into what you wrote. Mario, based on the 3 pages that I saw, there weren't a lot. By the way, you were super sneaky. Not a ton of dialogue on Mario's pages, but from what I could tell, it seemed fairly serious to start with. But that balance of being able to incorporate, there is humor in the world as well. So these 2 different projects couldn't have been any different. While at the same time, I know you guys are tackling and struggling and dealing with the same stuff. And that's kind of where, so I wanted to really get into first, like a deep dive into what the worlds and what you guys are working on. But now I think I really do want to get into how you're building out these Kickstarters. And of course, we're going to continue to talk about what's unique to your stories. But let's talk a little bit more about the inside baseball conversation about running a Kickstarter. Now, here's an icebreaker, though. In one word, or I'll give you a little leeway on if you need to wiggle there, but in one word, how would you describe running a Kickstarter? Mario, we'll start with you.
Daunting.
James?
Terrifying.
Christof?
My answer is so like nerdy in comparison. Data is my answer to that.
Can you give us a Webster's on that one? What's the word?
Sorry, data.
Data. Oh, okay.
Data. My accent getting like data, because for me it's so data driven. So much of it is research and going through spreadsheets and trying to figure out the trends.
Well, it's like on top of all the creative stuff, you have to also be the brains in the front office and everything too.
Yeah. Yep. And not only that, but like all these things that you don't even know. Like I just hit send like a few days ago on Real Slobber Knocker #1 to order all the print copies, and that is a terrifying task because it's like, did I do everything correctly? Am I doing it correctly? Is this okay? Am I going to get a printed copy? Like I got a proof first, so I'm waiting on that to get on the mail. But like, if I get this and it's like, I don't know, it looks like shit, or like there's some other problem with it, like I'm like, what do I even do? I don't know. I'm just the writer, like that's, I don't know what this is.
You have to make sure the files are in order. You have to make sure that the specs are correct for every page.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah, it's like a project manager, right? You become a project manager, and this is a huge project that you have to get through.
100%.
And
I mean,
go ahead.
I was going to say, the project management skills I think are really are really the most daunting part. And I imagine James and Mario, you find this similar, but it's like we didn't get into comics to project manage.
Yeah.
You know? So it's for a lot of creators,
that's my day job,
myself included, it's not a natural skill that we have.
I mean, I take what I know from my office. I run a division inside of a tech company for a financial institution, so it's a lot of data. It's a lot of double checking, triple checking, make sure everything is good. The last thing I want to do is, when I'm trying to write comics, do the same thing. But sometimes that's what it needs. You need to have that strong hand, and for me, James is that strong hand.
Get it done. I think I didn't realize how much I didn't know about making comics until I got into that nitty gritty for it. And, sometimes you just have to learn on the fly. But I think when you hit that launch button on Kickstarter, it's like, I hope everything's okay. Because once it gets going, you could, you could, just cancel it and restart. But it's agonizing to go through all of that and then have to copy it, start again from scratch kind of thing. So just kind of you jump into it and go.
Yeah, it feels like elementary school where you send out invitations to your birthday party and you hope kids show up.
Yeah, they don't have RSVP for elementary school kids, or at least they didn't when I was there.
And someone else had a competing party the same day.
That son of a bitch, Andy. I remember him.
That's personal,
Hey, close to home for Jake. But I did have a follow up on that, and I guess going back a little bit, right? Because we're talking about kickstarting, but for I don't know, I don't think James you have, but Mario has. I don't know if you have James publish something traditionally through a publisher. I know Mario has through Coachella, and Christof did through Under Kingdom. But was there any insight into the thought process beforehand of making, did you guys ever want to take it to a publisher, even though it's an anthology, and sometimes anthologies aren't as I guess requested by publishers? And then Christof the same. I mean, you have a horror comic, a space sci-fi comic. Did you and you've had traditional publishing? Did you want to go through that route? And I guess we'll start with Christof off on this one.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think with Requiem, Dave and me pitched it to a now more or less defunct publisher, maybe back in 2021, I think. And we were really happy with the idea. They just didn't. Basically, we gave them the log line and a quick pitch. They liked it. They asked for an outline, which we gave them, and which is actually the outline we used for the Kickstarter. So nothing is wasted. But asked for an outline, and then when they saw the outline, told us, "Oh, actually, we don't want to do it because it's the entire thing set on a spaceship, and it's too much like Alien." And it's like you could have picked that up. You didn't need a 3-page outline to be able to tell that. So we were like, "Fuck it, we've done the outline. Let's we like the story. We kind of really really fell in love with it as we worked on that outline. So we were like, all right, Kickstarter makes sense because you can just kind of get it done, What you need for a Kickstarter is really just a little bit more than what you need for a pitch, and you can just make it. You don't have to be beholden to editors and the whims of publishers and all these things that can be really ethereal and hard to pin down. So I think if you have a project and you're kind of I just want to make it, Kickstarter's a place to do that.
With this, in this particular case, Christof, the thing that they said they didn't like was one of the things that turned me on about it. Also, Alien was almost 45 years ago, by the way.
Yeah,
hasn't there been enough time since Alien that we can just do another Alien all 100%. On a ship, storyline? We can do that.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the problems Dave and me ran into when we were pitching stuff around together is a lot of our ideas are referential or riffs on existing genre tropes or kind of existing ideas. It's what if one really stupid idea we want to come back to actually was what if Conan the Barbarian was president of the United States, and we just had a laugh, it was a throwaway joke, and then we're oh, much like with the pizza thing, and it's oh, actually, what if we took this seriously? What does this look like? So a lot of the ideas we come up with, and Requiem included, are super referential, and sometimes that can understandably turn publishers off. Publishers, I think part of the issue I find as a creator when pitching is that what excites me and what I think is going to sell is often quite different to what publishers think is going to sell. You know, and obviously I'm wrong about some things and they're wrong about some things. So there's like a middle ground, but that's kind of the conflict. So again, the nice thing about Kickstarter is like, well, I think this is going to sell. You can take it to Kickstarter and find out if you're right or not.
Well, and if they're a now defunct publisher, or mostly defunct, I have a feeling they didn't really know what was going to sell.
I think I know who they are, too.
Yeah, look, that particular publisher was known also for being really finicky about what they kind of took and what they were interested in. So yeah, they were definitely, I think, I will say they were very finicky about what they wanted.
If it starts with an A, blink.
No comment on that. No comment on that. But I imagine other creators will probably know who I'm referring to.
Also, just so all the listeners out there, Christof has yet to blink. His eyes must be so dry at this point. I'm just joking. He doesn't have that high quality of a camera for me to tell that. So
that hurts me too.
That was not shade. I didn't mean it that way.
Wow.
Touchy crowd. Tough crowd, guys. Tough crowd.
I'm using a CRT camera here to crank myself.
Okay, so I kind of lost track where we were. Go ahead.
James and Mario were going to answer of the traditional publishing route versus Kickstarter.
Yeah, I never crossed my mind to pitch it. James, did you?
No, like I mean, it's just probably the wrong answer in someone that's pursuing a comic book writing career. But I really don't give a shit if anyone publishes my stuff. I'm gonna make it anyway. That's it. You know, I don't care. I'm gonna make comics. I'm gonna do that. Go the Kickstarter route until that doesn't work, and then I'll figure out whatever else I want to do. But for now, it's working. I'm gonna keep doing that. That's okay.
Yeah, I spent years doing the politics, making sure to do all the right stuff, and it didn't really work out that much. So now it's kind of just like, oh, fuck it, we'll do what we need to do. I mean, never crossed our mind to pitch this. Maybe if someone like Bands of Bards wants this after we're done, that's cool. That's great. But, the initial wave of just getting it out there and saying, hey, we did this for fun. This is honestly probably just me just fucking around, excuse me, just having a laugh with my friends. That's snowballed into something else that James is getting tons of great feedback from creators and readers alike who want to, see more or be a part of the next one if one's done. That alone is probably, for me, a better feeling, knowing that people are excited for it than saying from a publisher, oh, well, it's too much like this. We can't have that.
I think the great irony that you bring up, Mario, is like the idea that often publishers are more likely to be interested in something after it's been Kickstarted because you've got a proven market.
Yeah.
Curtis Clow is a great example of this, right? He's got Beastlands and then Highly Exaggerated, both of which, killed it on Kickstarter and now being published by Dark Horse. By my wonderful editor there, Connor, who did Under Kingdom. I know that those projects, are easier sells when they've got it's like the production's covered and we know there's a market. Like what, as a publisher, what more could you ask for from a pitch, right? It's to know that there's an audience and to know that the investment's going to be pretty minimal because it's all done.
I mean, I think for them, it's the difference between cooking a meal for a family and just throwing a Hungry Man in a microwave, right? Where this thing is done, we just gotta, do a bare minimum and we can eat. But yeah, I mean, with the way the publishing world is now, and purse is getting smaller and smaller and advance is getting smaller unless you're a proven person or you're a proven nostalgia IP that can, cannibalize the present by making money off the past, then, there's not a whole lot. So yeah, going to Kickstarter and doing this ourselves was probably the smarter move. But like James said, we didn't really think of anything else.
And I mean, there's a lot to be said for that as well too. Like, well, let me ask this, Christof, when were you pitching it? Like, how long has yours taken to go from where it was at to where we're at now?
Yeah, I mean, 2021, we were pitching. So it's a long, 2021 we were pitching. And then I think maybe we probably spent like a year on it, a year and a half kind of pitching it and just kind of, or at least, we didn't pitch it that many places, but kind of like thinking about like, we want to go the traditional publishing route before we decided, all right, let's kickstart. And then we kind of took a while for us to get kind of to the point where we were comfortable kickstarting it.
One benefit of that route too is, I mean, Christof, you said you had some delays and, in terms of getting everything ready. I mean, that's something that you could launch a Kickstarter campaign whenever you want, right? Like you're not on a deadline per se. It's whatever deadlines you create for yourself for that. So that flexibility of, all right, you know what, you could put everything in there. Look, if National Pizza Day passed, I would find something else like a pepperoni day or something else, or just launch the thing. Like, I don't care. Launch it on some random Friday that everyone eats pizza on Fridays. Like, I would just throw it on there. Day. That's it. So we would find something to still make it go forward if we, couldn't get that deadline. But that was something we just found, we drew a line in the sand and did it.
Well, I was going to ask about control. So something about you guys being your own publishers, taking it to Kickstarter and going this route. Obviously, you have more control, but for all of you, is having a control over what you're creating, is that a value prop for you? Is that something where you're like, that is number one on my priority list? I want to have more control over what I'm doing instead of giving that control over to said publisher, who then, like you said, creates the deadlines, creates the stress, creates all of those pieces, and the editing where they tell you what they do and don't like.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean,
there's takeaways, right? It's give and take. Sorry, James, I didn't mean to step on you for that.
No, good.
I mean, yeah, I would love to give up some control and have someone else, be the bad guy or the wrangler. Yeah, I definitely for Killchella had James do that for me. I was like, hey, this person is not doing it. Can you send them a mean message so I don't send them a vulgar message and get stuff done? It give and take. Yes, I want to be involved in it. This isn't a work for hire where I'm just, coming in as a hired gun to pump out a script and then I'm just out. So I think, project to project, the answer is different. But for this type of thing, for a Kickstarter where you're more in control of your own fate, you have to cut enough rope to hang yourself with. So, it really is, being the boss is cool, or at least teaming up with people who are adults in the room and know how to project manage and do things and have a clear vision also. Christof, you teamed up with a really great crew of people who seem like, they have common goals that they want to get in there, so they're going to work together. This isn't like sorry to go back to school, but some type of class project where there's the 3 people not really doing much and only 2 people or 1 person trying to lead the whole thing.
Yeah, but if you get a good grade, if you get the good grade when you're on that team.
Like, if you ride the bench and your team wins a Super Bowl, you still get a ring, but everyone knows you weren't on there.
That while that might be true, as somebody who rode the bench in high school to a state championship, I still claim that state championship.
Still counts.
And the further we get from the championship, fewer people remember if I did or did not play in that game.
So when are you gonna have your Al Bundy moment where you have 3 touchdowns in a single game?
It's happening right now. I mean,
yeah.
Go ahead, Christof. You had something to say.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for me, I kind of approach, to an extent, bringing pitching as almost you're looking for another collaborator and an editor and a publisher. So I think part of it as well is often the ideas that I'm more likely to want to pitch are the ones where I'm like, I want the support of an editor and a publisher to help me kind of both creatively, but also kind of help me figure out where this fits in with the market. Where there were some other ideas, like, again, as the more we kind of worked on Requiem, the more we're like, oh, we feel this is fully formed. We're happy with where it's at. We don't feel we need to kind of, need a traditional editorial and publishing support. Although we do have the wonderful Chris Sanchez doing our editing.
Okay.
But yeah, we kind of felt like we didn't need that traditional structure. So I think that's part of it as well. And there's definitely ideas where I pitch them and I'm like, this is only going to work with a publisher because I'm going to need that extra support to make this kind of viable in the market and also just, I guess coherent and make sense. I'm going to need, a lot of support to do that.
Fair.
I mean,
fair.
Yeah, I mean the control part. I knew Jake was gonna ask about it because he loves to control stuff, and that's all he like. That's his main thing. But I did have two hard hitting questions that I definitely want to get into, and it's kind of how to ask them, I guess, right? Because there's been a lot of conversation around it previously, and we're not immune to it. We hear it. We're part of the community. The first one, I'll preface this by saying there's no wrong answer. And then the second one we can get into. But the first one is, does pineapple belong on a pizza? I mean, I think that's the hard-hitting questions that we got to answer here. And then the second question is, okay, around Kickstarters, where to put the goal at, right? Because there's some people put the goal, $1,000, right? Some people put it, significantly higher. Ryan Little, who was on the show again, I mentioned him because he went in depth into it with us. He literally puts it for, I think he said $3,100, which is what the shipping cost him, but that's not what the art costed him. That's not what the lettering, the editing, nothing. So he's paying everything else out of pocket. He just wants to make sure that the shipping is covered, and then it's a successful Kickstarter in the terms of being funded, but not necessarily profitable, right? And I think that's something that and by profitable, I don't mean like, I'm just saying enough to cover like even, right? So cost, yeah. So where do you guys individually, like, how do you guys put a number on your own Kickstarter, and what's the underlying thought process on that? And we can start with James on that one.
Well, to answer your first question about pineapple, I mean, I grew up with the Ninja Turtles cartoon, and so you could put whatever the hell you want on pizza. All right. Like it's whatever you want. All right. I don't know. A buddy of mine tried some of those like Ninja Turtle pizzas where it's like, I don't know, like anchovies and chocolate ice cream or something like that. And he's like, this will be great. And he's like, no, it's not. It's not great. But you know what? More power to you. And in terms of the goal, I mean, look, I don't think anyone's really going into comics to get rich. We're doing this because we love the genre. We want to tell stories. That's it. So with this campaign, we set this in order to just basically cover the rest of the artwork and some of the shipping. Like my story is done. Like I paid Darren Vogt, who's an amazing artist. I just paid him out of pocket because I'm like, I just want this. I want to make this. Pete Collins, who did an incredible cover for it, just paid him out of pocket for it. Of like, look, doing this now, like, great, okay, that's done. That's not included in the Kickstarter goal. All right, if I get that back 10 years from now from selling 1 million copies of this book, awesome. But I'm not expecting that to happen from this Kickstarter. I just want to make this book and get it out there in the world.
Mario?
Yeah, you want to put pineapple on a pizza, go right ahead. I mean, anchovies are a full fish. You're putting on their bones, eyeballs, everything. That's gross. So, if that's the bar, pineapple is sure. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what James said. I have heard a lot of other creators say that just put the goal for like $1,000, so no matter what, you make the goal and pay the rest of the pocket. But unfortunately, I feel that out-of-pocket cost is what prohibits a lot of people from getting into comics to begin with, because not everybody has the means to pay, let's say $1,500 up front for cover, line art, concept art, color, if you do color, and all that. And that goes the same for a pitch too, which is an even bigger gamble than a Kickstarter is. I've been burned before putting a goal for way too much because that's how much I needed. Because my wife's like, no, don't put any more of our damn money into doing this, and it didn't work out. So we found ways to adjust and fix things, and then, broke through in the end. But the real answer for that is, if you have the means for that, if you have disposable income to put towards this like that, go right ahead. If you don't, try to be more smart. Yes, it'll be harder to get into comics, but maybe team up with an artist who is hungry and also wants to do this. I've done that before, where someone says, hey, let's work together. Let's not worry about the payment, because they're also trying to make it, and they know that sure, an artist can draw a story and a writer can sometimes draw, but you need a good story and good art sometimes to really bring the whole thing home. So teaming up might be, the best opportunity.
Yeah, 100%.
So Christof, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, again, go nuts with pineapple on pizza. I'm very when it comes to food, I have very strong opinions about. I'm very anti like dare food. So food that the food that you'd have for like a dare. So like the anchovy and chocolate ice cream pizza comes to mind, and also food-based pranks. Hate food-based pranks. So I think everyone should do whatever they want to do with food and have a good time, but just don't be a food bully. And then in terms of Kickstarters, I think my approach is maybe a little bit different. So I write full time, which means that for me, my biggest kind of with any project, my biggest kind of concern is financial sustainability. Which is different to me from profits. Like, not every project I do is going to actually, contribute to my income, but I do want to make sure that I'm not doing any projects that are losing significant amounts of money. That's just not financially, it's just not sustainable long term, which is bad for me and bad for the fans because it means that I can't keep doing it. So with Requiem, for the most part, on the first one, I think Dave and me lost a little bit of money that would put towards, paying some of the production costs, but 90% of the costs were represented in that budget. And with the second one, same thing. For the most part, almost all the costs are represented in the budget.
I like that. And I like the different approaches. And I know that's kind of why we wanted the Roundtable as well, because all these Kickstarters, there's lots of successful Kickstarters and they're all run very different. And that's what makes it interesting and worth the conversation. We have, since we started Spec Tales, talked to more and more and more creators, all of which going to crowdfunding Nick Patara, who has been creating and making art for over a decade on major projects, right? Like the Manhattan projects was over a decade ago and wildly successful. I believe at one point it was optioned, and then, I don't even know how you would turn that into a show or something like that, but whatever. But the idea though is like Nick had a project he wanted to do himself, and he didn't want anybody else having control. He wanted that control with Axe Wielding John.
Yeah, Axe Wielding John, which is a incredible book. He's like the art on that book is like Frank quietly kind of like vibe.
Yes. Oh God. Yeah. He mentioned.
Level,
that's one of his.
For him.
It's one of his idols. Yeah, that's one of his grails. And so you're looking at literally, even Vault Comics, who is a publisher, by the way. I don't know if everybody's aware of that. Vault Comics running their own Kickstarters. So with so much of this industry just saying, okay, right now, nobody, even the publishers are saying they don't have to put the money up front. They're going to kickstart things as well. In general, I understand each of you are currently promoting a Kickstarter, but we're kind of winding a little bit closer to the end. And before we really, give our final pitches and do all of that with regards to your guys' projects, I'd love to get your thoughts. Mario, maybe you specifically, but everybody's thoughts on how the entire industry, including the publishers, are like the big names all the way down to the nobodies are all trying to get. Now it's like this mad dash that they can fund everything all at once or go to the Kickstarter. And now everybody's leaning on the fans to produce their own. Now we do get to decide what gets produced though, right? We get to look and say, I'm not going to support that one, but I am going to support this one. So what are your guys' thoughts on this real massive shift in the comic community?
It feels like comics is taking a page from the streaming wars that Hollywood went through not that long ago and didn't learn any of the good stuff, really. They are going direct to the consumer with a lot of these items. I think Gargoyles just had one from Boom Studios. Is that currently running? And
I don't know if it finished or not.
I'm sorry?
I don't know if it finished or not, but you're right. Todd McFarlane as well.
Yeah, he did the Spawn figures a couple of years ago. I mean, and he has McFarlane Toys, which goes into Target and all sorts of big box things. I do see the benefit of providing a niche collector's item to people directly. Like I subscribe to A24, and I get their items that they sell, screenplay books, collector's editions of their items, as well as merchandise every once in a while. But that's not the same as saying, hey, we will only make this CD or this vinyl from this movie if we make $100,000 of it. It's direct sale versus kind of do crowdfunding. I mean, Hasbro's doing that. Mattel Creations does that with bigger, high level action figures as well. I think basically as long as it's done with care and not seen as a notable cash grab, I guess it's okay. I mean, if you're providing them something to the customer of value and not just saying, we won't give you the full book unless you spend $100. I've seen that before. I think it was a bad idea, was it? I'm not too sure.
That sounds like a bad idea.
Okay. I mean, once again, it's one of those case by case things where, I hate to brush everything with that swath, but, how it's handled, how it's done, how it's rolled out, and if it's done with care, if they do shop participation, or say after when this is done, we will have items for the retailers, so you're not pissing off your retail partners also. I mean, it's hard to compete as a creator with that, but also at the same time, it's not, because oftentimes creators themselves are driving the sales for a lot of stories, same as they would for a comic shop into a publisher. So, I mean, if you just have this a built-in market, Christof, I know you run a number of campaigns before, so you have your distribution list and you have successes in other places that you can lean on as well. That helps. Publishers just they're just a bigger person who has bigger reach, but other than that, it's the same fundamentals if you can try to jump into it.
And Christof, same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think my understanding, and I could be wrong on this, but my understanding basically for Kickstarter is that when the publishers like Vault or Boom, come in, like that doesn't really take money away from smaller creators. It seems to just make Kickstarter comics bigger. That's my kind of understanding, is that the segment of Kickstarter that is comics is just getting bigger. So I think it's easy to feel like these, when these big publishers come in and are doing Kickstarters, they're taking money away from, indie Kickstarters, but I don't believe that's the reality of what's happening. And I think Berserker is such a great example, right? Boom copped a lot of flack for that, but the reality is that I kind of see that as a win for comics, because number one, you're bringing in a whole bunch of people who are Keanu fans who now know about Boom as a publisher, and might, and some of those people will get converted and try other Boom titles and go from there. And then the other thing is, in what world would you have a celebrity talking about a comic on late night talk shows? So those, which is great for the medium and the industry. So I think those big Kickstarters are often cop flack, but I think they do way more good than they do, if any harm. So I think it makes sense. And Jesus, you were talking before about the kind of one of the difficulties of, shopping at a comic shop is if they have issue 3 and not the other issues. I think Kickstarter is becoming a new way to browse stuff as well. And again, with when these big publishers do the Kickstarters, you can see it on Kickstarter, and you might not want to support it then, but with like Berserker or the Sainted Love that Vault did, like it's going to hit comic shops. So I think there's a good back and forth, and I don't think that these things compete. I think they kind of all prop each other up for the most part.
Yeah, a rising train.
Yeah, rising tide lifts all ships.
Yeah, all ships rise the tide.
Bring it back with the whale tail story. So
full circle. Real quick before
Jake, hold on. James has to give his thoughts.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, gosh, dang it.
I think that the key there is understanding the platform a little bit. Like if they're just using it as a store, that's not great. But if they're creating something special, like Tim Seeley does the Hack Slash Omnibus books on there, and they offer exclusive rewards, exclusive covers that are only available through that Kickstarter. Yeah, that'll be in comic shops in a few months. But the idea is that the diehard fans that really want something. They want something special there, and to help support the creator, I mean, it's not the same as supporting a publisher per se, but if they want to support that, then they can show that through Kickstarter. So I think understanding that and what delivering on that is what's helpful when a publisher goes in there. But it's ultimately just, it comes down to making good stories, right? People are going to back it if it's good, if it's worth investing in, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, James, great minds think alike. I was literally going to talk about Tim because, I don't know, he figured something out with it as well. And he's kind of created this fan base that is understanding and knows every time he's going to drop a new Kickstarter of Hack Slash that he's going to have a new story that goes along with it. And he's going to give a bunch of cool stuff, artwork, things of that nature, which is really cool. So, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's beneficial for everybody. I think the big challenge is, again, converting some of these older folks like myself that have been going to an LCS for 10, 15 years and trying to figure out how to manage and how to, look at stuff that we like and put it on our pull list for Kickstarter, right? Like, 'cause that's basically what it is, right? Because it's going to come out in the future. But I did have two questions for you guys before we kind of move on. So the two questions I had is backers, right? Like every Kickstarter I see, two things happen with the backers. One, they want people to hit the notify button to have as many backers. So kind of want to get the genesis behind that and the reasoning behind that. Two, how many backers are you guys looking at or from the data from what Christof says, it makes it a potential for a successful Kickstarter? That's the first thing. And the second thing is the projects we love. How important is the projects we love on your Kickstarter? And we can start with James on that one.
So I admittedly I have limited experience on the projects we love, but to put in context, that pre-order link is or notification link is basically a gauging of interest, right? The more every one of those people that hit that button is going to get an email when you launch the campaign. So the more, and to remind them and go, hey, it's here. And not only will they get the email when you launch, but if they don't back it by the time the campaign is over, they get two more emails. They get one at 48 hours out and one at, I think, 8 hours out. So that is alerting them and reminding them, hey, this was this thing you showed interest in. Here's, you're running out of time to back it. So I think that's key. But to put in perspective, when we created that page, we didn't send it to anywhere. No one saw it. We never published it anywhere. We didn't share it online. We had a whole plan as to how we were going to start to reveal this. Before we had shared it anywhere, we had 25 people that had already signed up to be notified because it pops up in the coming soon section of Kickstarter. So there's people in the Kickstarter community that are scrolling through that and looking at campaigns that are coming up. And there were 25 people that thought, hey, this looks cool, and hit that button already before we did anything. So that felt like good of like, all right, maybe we have something here. And, hopefully this can take off even further.
Mario, did you want to...
No, James hit it on the head. I mean, when I ran One True Love, we had a lot of watchers, but the campaign now, the Kickstarter's, I guess, dashboard shows you what percentage of your watchers have converted over. And the watchers numbers, even during the campaign, still grew because people were hitting the watch button somewhere while it was still live. And then, I mean, the convert number was like something like 41%, which is like if only those rest of them, converted, we would have blown this out of the water. But yeah, and it does help show interest in as to what people like. It's a nice feather in your cap also to hit, 100 plus or so before you launch. So you can say, hey, we have people watching this. But the projects we love, it's nice. It's nice to get that. But if you don't, projects are successful. I mean, people in this room right now are living proof of that, where you can meet your goal and still not hit that. But it's nice to get that little dose of validation, even if it doesn't really, mean much if you're going to make your goal or not.
Okay, Christof?
Yeah, so in terms of the backer numbers, for me, it's a really simple equation. It's what is our average spend going to be times backers? And then that both figures out what our average spend needs to be, which informs the reward tiers we're kind of pushing people towards and what those price points need to be. And then also what our backer goal is. So that's kind of how I figured that out. It's a pretty simple equation. And then in terms of people signing up for the pre-launch, look, Mario and James really hit it on the head. And the thing I kind of wanted to talk about as well is one of the challenges of Kickstarter is basically trying to get people's attention. It's really easy, like even if they've signed up to watch the Kickstarter or for them to get lost in that ecosystem. What you really want is access to their email. So anything that gives you access to their email is really powerful. And it's important to note, and this is because I'm from a marketing background, is that with your backer data, it's at least in Australia and I believe in Europe as well, and I think by Kickstarter's own standard, you can't actually export that data and email people with it because you don't have permission to send them marketing emails or communicate with them outside of Kickstarter. So anything that allows Kickstarter to send them an email is really powerful.
I'm happy you said that. Actually, that's something that we talked about. James talks about a lot. Sometimes we get James. I don't want to tell your story, but this is something you brought up the other day that really made me laugh a little bit about emails being sent to you.
Yeah, so like that's it, the key thing there is just permission, right? Like I've been added quite frequently to a Kickstarter campaign. The creator's email, and I'm like, really, why would you do this?
Yeah.
It's one thing to ask permission and then get added in, but to get thrown at the end is not great.
No, and I think number one, it rubs people the wrong way, and number two, I mean, it's unlikely that legal action is going to be taken against you, but it is technically illegal. So it's, and I think that's something that a lot of indie creators and even sometimes I've seen it with, in some of the indie comics marketing people not understanding the compliances around email permissions. God, and I know this is why people tune into the podcast to hear me rant about email permissions. But I think, no, it's just really important for aspiring and new creators to be aware of those.
You don't want to get sued in Europe or something for GDPR compliance.
Yeah, 100%.
So, okay. So shipping, right? Is there a general standard, right? Because like James said, like he doesn't know what to do once he presses go or if something happens or whatever. It's you guys being the project managers and kind of figuring it out, right? There's no template. There's no website you guys go to how to run a successful Kickstarter or whatever things you do or don't do. But when it comes to like shipping, right? Is paying extra for shipping after a campaign ends, is that like common? Is that something that's supposed to happen, or what happens with shipping when it comes to Kickstarter? Is that supposed to be included in it? What are your thoughts on that?
Let's go with you, Mario.
This is something that gets a lot of flack online, honestly, in our very small but vocal Twitter community, where a project will fund, and of course, you pay whatever you have to pay for, right, for backing. And you expect that to be the all-in cost. And then fast forward 6 months later when the book is ready, you're getting an email from BackerKit or some third-party fulfillment company saying, hey, you need to pay an extra bit to get your book. And it's kind of like double dipping, I feel. Not a big fan of it, especially when you're getting to like $20, $30 to ship a book. When, as someone who ships something constantly, I know for a fact if you do media or even just cheaper first class, it's not going to cost that much. But I think it puts an extra bind and leaves a bad taste in the mouth of your customers, not just other creators, to say, hey, why do I have to pay extra for something I thought I already paid for this?
It feels like you're holding the book hostage at that point. Like, hey, it's all done and we're ready to give it to you, but for an additional fee. Like it's like this is a real nice book you have here. It'd be a real shame if something were to happen to it.
It's a shakedown. Yeah.
But the only argument I have that I've seen for it, Eric Palicki mentioned this to me online because I've made a vow now that I'm not going to back a Kickstarter campaign that charges shipping after the fact anymore. I'm done with that. And we mentioned Tim Seeley's Kickstarter, and I've backed the last 4 of them. I have them on my shelf behind me. This one came around, and he's like, we're charging shipping after. I'm like, I'm done. Sorry. I'll wait for the book to hit the comic book shop. But Eric pointed out that for us, like, look, I'm not getting thousands of backers, right? This one will be. This will be thousands. If you make a rounding error on that, that could suddenly cost you a lot of money. So when you get into that level, I understand that of like why they're pursuing it. I don't have to like it. Again, I voted with my wallet. I said, you know what? I'm going to wait. I'll pick up the book when it hits the comic shop, but That's it. So that's the only difference there. With the smaller guys, I don't think there's an excuse.
And Christof, what are your thoughts on that? Because I have some.
I think I'm probably in the middle. I'm just transparency. I think it's, be very, transparent about what people are paying for, how much they're paying for it, and when they're going to pay.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a backer, I just want to be informed. Because, I've definitely had instances where I paid and then later, what I thought was the full amount and then later had to pay for shipping. And it does, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But I think just being really upfront with people, with Requiem, that's definitely what we try and do. We, on the Kickstarter page, we let people know, what you pay now is the full amount and here's, the shipping. So I think transparency is just important.
Yeah. And as James said, it allows them to, or allows the backers to vote with their wallet, right? Or they really ultimately get to make that decision. And that I appreciate that. Go ahead, Jesus.
I have two quick things before we move on, because we're getting long in the tooth here. But you open up a kind of not a can of worms per se, but I just brought it back together. Although you guys are independent, right? As far as you're running your own campaigns, the other comic creators in the space do have some sort of effect on you guys, whether it's this where if I have a bad experience with somebody on Kickstarter, I'm gonna be like, well, is this guy gonna do the same thing as that guy? Or I'm gonna group, and I'm not saying I do this, but some people do group all the people in Kickstarter the same. And so there is a sort of push and pull with other creators that you guys have to come to somewhat of a consensus or general guidelines within the community, so that everybody like myself or new people coming in have somewhat of a similar experience within the comic book community when they're backing comic book creators, so that they have good experiences versus having negative experiences. And that sucks from a standpoint of, well, that guy charged me afterwards, I'm not going to do that, but that guy didn't back me because that guy did that to him. So it's a very interesting dynamic on the Kickstarter, on the crowdfunding, because y'all are independent, like I mentioned, but at the same time, y'all do have a lot of cross-pollination from readers and from buyers. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that was interesting that you guys mentioned that, and that there's also, I'm sure there's more than just the shipping piece of that, right? Like the time frame. I think time frame is another one where some people have literally ghosted their backers.
Yeah.
And we can get into that. I think that's another.
There's a few of them now. I mean, like that big Tales from the Quarantine, not to be confused with Tales from the Pandemic, which is a very popular and very easily available anthology. But that guy like just ghosted everybody, and it's like the thing doesn't exist. And there was one or two other ones that happened not that long ago. That it does leave a sour taste in your mouth of like, well, wait, I don't want to back this. I want to lose the money. I didn't get anything.
I mean, I was part of Off Into the Sunset, which is a Western anthology. So many people were in that. We went to bat hard for that a couple of years ago, and it just never came out. Brent spent the money. It's like $20,000. He spent it on a lot of other things. I don't know what he got into. I saw him in LA not too long after that fund, and he was talking about how he got a new car. And he's going out to Florida, and I didn't put two and two together. I was just thinking, oh, cool, this guy, was just getting a car, and not realizing, oh, he probably used the campaign funds for that. In his mind, thinking I will pay this back somehow out of my own money, but sometimes that spirals out of control, and you just realize you can't keep up with what you owe.
Yeah, that's usually how debt gets people, unfortunately. So, Jesus, did you have a follow up, or am I stepping on you? Sorry about that.
Just a quick thing for our listeners, and you guys have all mentioned it. That you guys, when y'all back stuff, when y'all are backing stuff, so everybody here has backed or backs the Kickstarter economy. So it's not what I'm trying to say is they're walking the walk and talking the talk. They're creating, but they're also backing other creators in that community. So they know what they're talking about. They're part of it. And so just if you guys do, we would recommend you guys go and support these guys. And we'll get into the I don't know if you were ready to get into the final stuff, Jake.
Yeah. I was going to roll right into, speaking of backing all of these wonderful individuals. So here's what we have now. James and Mario, is it February 9th?
Correct.
I believe.
Correct.
Is the launch date for this Kickstarter. I keep wanting to say Patreon, because of course that's, in the podcast realm, that's kind of something that we do, but obviously not. So this particular episode of Spec Tales is dropping on February 7th. So 2 days prior to your Kickstarter. We will have a link in the show notes if you're looking for where the notification, the upcoming projects page is for Slices of Life, A World Without Pizza. That will be in the show notes. Please go and check that out so that you can be notified. February 9th is when it's going to be up. James and Mario, one question I have for your final pitch sort of thing. Can you guys give us a sneak peek? Is there a favorite incentive? What do they call them again? Now I'm
rewards.
Reward. Do you have a favorite one? What's the best one maybe in your mind, and that people should be on a lookout for when this drops?
So I could take that one. The book itself is great, but I think what we came up with a unique way of doing the thank you page. So instead of just a big list of backers' names, we're making a pizza menu. So it's going to be, if you back at the lower level, your name is listed as one of the toppings, but for a limited amount of people, you get to make your own pizza, and they're on the top part of it. So I think we have 10 available. So, and it could be whatever you want. If you want anchovies and chocolate ice cream, boom, that could be the Jake pizza. Boom, right up top there, right? And you can have that as a higher tier for it. So, a little unique spin on the thank you page.
I think we'd call it JJ's favorite. I think that's what the
Tater
pizza
tots?
would be called. Yeah.
With tater tots on the top.
Yeah, tater tots on the pizza have to be, for sure.
My favorite thing is something that we're discussing. It's not, I don't want to give spoilers, but it's kind of a stretch goal. We are throwing back to a classic Superman story for an extra added item. If what is like the first stretch goal or the second one?
I think it's the first one. We haven't even gotten that far. I want to get this thing. I want to get this thing funded first, and then we can talk about the stretch goals.
Based on what I've seen, from what you guys have sent, everything is so well made. It is so great. A lot of good thought went into it. And Jesus and I can say, just from our experience in talking with you guys for the last couple of years, that the amount of skill and effort put into everything that you guys are doing is such a high quality. So we can't recommend it enough. And we were so excited when you guys started promoting this specific, because we remember when you told us about this Kickstarter, when that it was coming like 2 years ago or whenever it was, that we knew we wanted to promote it. So we highly recommend to all the listeners out there to go to the link in our show notes or follow. James and Mario both are very active on social media. They are easy to find and easy to follow, and they are going to be promoting this as well. That is the Slices of Life, A World Without Pizza. I want to make sure I say A World Without Pizza, because that's the thing, right? Like Slices of Life, cool title. A World Without Pizza. What the hell are you talking about here? Right?
That's what I got it.
Anyway,
I understand. Wait a minute. What? Yeah, that's
exactly. Because the first half sounds very nice, right? Very cool. A World Without Pizza. Now I'm willing to go to war. And Christof, your Requiem 1 through 2 is out February 13th. That's when the Kickstarter is?
Yeah, February 13 Eastern time.
Okay, cool. So yeah, you're in Australia, but you're basically pushing for the United States, right? Like that's a little bit of your market.
I mean, last time the majority of our backers were in the States, so we're kind of trying to make it. Obviously we are doing cheaper shipping for Australian backers this time, which we didn't do in the first one. But yeah, a lot of it is geared towards people in the States.
Gotcha. And so this one, we talk a lot about horror, of course. That is kind of a passion of mine. And I've already said that I really did dig the connections I found to Alien. It's not Alien though, everybody. It's not like, that's not what I'm saying it is. I'm saying that there's some emotional, like the thrills, the mystery involved, right? That it shrouded in, especially the first issue. like totally worth getting involved in and getting, addicted to. But so February 13th, Christof, I didn't give you enough time. What is your favorite reward, or like if you don't mind spoiling a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So we're really excited for this second one. We kind of wanted to give people who had backed the first one a way to re-experience issue 1. So we're doing what we're calling like the artist edition, which is going to just be the inks by our amazing artist and co-creator Phil Apley. So we're getting the first issue, just the inks lettered, so you can read it, the issue fully in just the black and white inks, and they look stunning. Like the finished comic looks great, but Phil's inks are particularly incredible. So we're really excited for that. It unfortunately isn't going to be available physically at this stage. It's just going to be a digital award, but we're super excited.
Very cool. Still though, yeah. After seeing the details in the art, I'd love to see that as well.
Yeah, Phil's inks are exceptional. He's going to be a superstar.
I hope so. I have no doubt. All right. So February 13th, Requiem, and February 9th, Slices of Life, World Without Pizza. So everybody go out, find these. We're going to have the links in our show notes. Christof, I definitely need to get that link from you. I don't think you sent it. Spectales is already following or waiting patiently for Slices of Life, and we will be as well for Requiem. If anybody out there has any doubts about these two Kickstarters, I don't know what you were just listening to for the last hour and 20 minutes, but please reach out to all of these individuals. They're wonderful. They're friends of the show, and they are always cool to talk to, and I'm sure they can give you even more reason personally through connection on social media. But thank you, all three of you, for being a part of our Kickin Roundtable. We didn't know what was going to happen exactly, and we were kind of coming into this wondering, like, is this going to work? But, Jesus was confident. I was worried. Jesus was confident it was always going to work.
That's fair, I guess.
Well, thank you guys so much. This was so much fun. And yeah, really interesting hearing Mario and James kind of your take on things.
Yeah, likewise. You come from a different place. I was worried about the shipping for you too. You talk about paying extra for shipping. I'm like, oh, geez.
It's kind of the way of the world, though. Unfortunately, right? Sometimes the international shipping can certainly be a pain. I think that's where we're going to cut it. That's where we're going to say we're good to go. Thank you, everybody, for out there listening. This was episode 101. We are going to be back next week with another Grail Tale. Hopefully you enjoyed the Whale Tale this week. And thanks again to all who participated in this Kickin Roundtable. We had a lot of fun. Otherwise, we will see everybody next week. We usually end by saying, have a good week. I'm going to end this week by saying, have a good week and help somebody else have a good week. See you later.